Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Evo Institute for Jewish Research and the launch of Is Anything Okay? The History of Jews and Comedy in America. I'm Ben Kaplan, Director of Education at Evo, and we're so thrilled to have you here. Whether you're joining us in person or online through our live stream, we have about 450 people joining through live stream. For those of you new to Evo, Evo is a special place for the celebration and study of Jewish history and culture, with a particular focus on the experience of East European Jewry worldwide. At the core of Evo are our archives and library, which comprise some 24 million items and over 400,000 volumes of books. We carry our mission forward through public programs, exhibitions, classes, and more. Is Anything Okay? Is the fifth class in Evo's Shine Online educational series, which offers free online classes to the public. Our previous courses have covered the history of Jews in Eastern Europe, Ashkenazi Jewish folklore, the history of the Yiddish theater, and the history of Ashkenazi Jewish food. Courses are flexible and interactive, allowing users to study at their own pace and to delve into Evo's unique collection of resources. They are free and available to you forever. These courses would not be possible without the generous support of our donors. I want to thank John Richmond and the Shine Trust, Ruth and David Levine, and Edward Blank, who's here with us this evening, and family for their visionary support of this course and this series. I also want to thank the leadership at Evo, our Executive Director, Jonathan Brent, the Evo Board, and the entire Evo staff. A huge thanks goes to Eddy Portnoy, our lead scholar on this course, our education team, August Kahn and Jonah Tauber, our researchers, Charlotte Apter and Zeke Levine, Yid Life Crisis, and our colleagues Alex Brandwein, Shelley Freeman, Stephanie Halpern, Julia Rothkopf, Jessica Tauber, and Alex Weiser. I want to thank Judy and Alan for joining us tonight. You both are such brilliant and courageous voices in the world of comedy, and we're so grateful to you for helping us to tell this story. Last, I want to thank all of you with us here tonight and all of you around the world who support Evo and engage with our programs and resources. It is your passion for Jewish history and culture that makes this work such an honor and such a joy. We are so grateful to have you as part of our Evo community. We're going to start with the course trailer, and then we'll hear from my colleague, Eddy Portnoy, who will introduce our panel. I hope you enjoy.
Two old Jewish men are on the Titanic. One of them starts sobbing. The other one says, "What are you crying for? It's not your boat."
Were there comedians in Nazi Germany?
Were they cracking jokes on the pyramids?
Humor keeps the tragic in check.
Comedy is a weapon
to fight against anti-Semitism.
Survival because of your wits.
If you don't have physical prowess, try comedy.
There's something positive about joking about the negative.
Why am I laughing? This is the most horrible story in the world.
No!
What?
There's a certain amount of self-deprecation.
What you think is criticism is nothing compared to the self-loathing I can bring to the table.
A lot of the history of modern comedy is the Jewish American story.
A lot can be learned about a particular society by looking at the jokes they tell.
Performers of the 1920s and 30s.
The Marx Brothers, the Catskill Mountains.
Your show of shows.
Seinfeld.
Lenny Bruce.
Joan Rivers.
Joan was the goat. Is goat kosher?
Oi, everyone's a comedian, eh?
Mm-hmm. This is my Jewseum.
Next to Yiddish, sarcasm is the other language we speak.
Yiddish has like 20 words for idiot. Schlemiel, schlemazel, schmendrick.
Somebody had a dream to put out this magazine called Schlump.
The complaining becomes an art form.
It may also be worth noting that not all Jews are funny.
Now he tells me.
There's comedy in the Hebrew Bible.
Even God cannot do anything but laugh.
Two Jewish women are having lunch, and the waiter comes by and says, "Is anything okay?"
There's something so wonderfully Jewish about it.
It's as Jewish as it gets.
Some of the material in this class might be found offensive. They're jokes.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out. I have a few thank yous as well, so please bear with me. First of all, I want to thank Ben Kaplan for shepherding this project through. Thank you, Ben. I'd also like to thank everyone he thanked, but I won't repeat all their names because you really don't need to sit through it again. I would like to add thanks to people like Drew Friedman and Yidlife Crisis who helped us out as well. And I'd also like to thank the Borscht Belt Museum for co-sponsoring this launch event, and in fact there will be borscht and blintzes available afterwards. I'm not kidding. I'd like to thank everyone who worked on the class and who participated in it, especially everyone at YIVO who we hocked for about 2 years making this thing. Also, a special thank you to Dan Pasternak, who not only gave us great historical material, but also some great interviews. And some of those interviews with comedians and comedy writers that you'll find in the class include, among others, Robert Klein, Louis Black, Jenna Friedman, Paul Reiser, Mark Maron, and of course, Alan Zweibel and Judy Gold, who are here with us and who will be with us shortly for the more interesting part of this program. It is, I must say, great to see so many people here for the launch of this new class, Is Anything Okay? The Story of Jews and Comedy in America. I'm a little surprised at the number of people who came out for this, frankly, because we didn't really get a big crowd for the launch of our other class called The Internal Turmoil of Isaac Bashevis Singer, or IBS on IBS. I knew a scatological Yiddish literary joke would hit with this crowd. To be honest, though, we don't normally hold launch parties for our classes, all of which are interesting and all are worth checking out regardless. And if any of you are wondering why the title of the class is Anything Okay?, it comes from an old Borscht Belt joke in which a waiter walks over to a table of Jewish women, looks at them and says, "Is anything okay?" And if you don't get it, the punchline is a reference to a distinctly Jewish dissatisfaction with everything, right? So why would a Yiddish-oriented historical research institute like YIVO do a class on the history of Jews and comedy? In part because when you scratch the surface of American Jewish humor, you'll find Yiddish beneath it. But also because comedy is such an integral part of the American Jewish experience, and because Jewish comedians and comedy writers have played such a huge role and have contributed so much to the history of the field. Well known in history as the people of the book, the Jews may be better known today as the people of the joke. This new online course delves into the history of Jewish humor from the traditions of Purim spielen and Jewish wedding jesters in Eastern Europe to radically new forms of comedic output in the 20th century. From the earliest jokes told on the Lower East Side to the comedy routines honed in the Borscht Belt. We also delve into how Jewish comics in nightclubs and in film and on television challenged many of the taboos of American culture. The story of Jews in comedy captures the journey of Jewish immigrants and their descendants and sheds lights on shifts in cultural identity and the role of Jews in developing new forms of comedy. The course features hundreds of archival objects, including rare vintage joke books, sheet music, early comedy records, film and television clips, photographs, posters, and more, along with interviews with some of today's leading Jewish comedians, comedy writers, cultural critics, and academics. We hope that the course will provide some insight into the long history of Jewish humor, how it came to inform Jewish culture and American comedy, and why it is still relevant today. More than a presentation of comedic material, the class is an inquiry into the origins and development of Jewish humor and the ways in which different generations of Jews have dealt with a raft of cultural, political, and societal issues through the medium of comedy. The course itself can be found at yivo.org/comedy. It's absolutely free to take, although if you wanted to make a donation, we wouldn't refuse it. It's now my pleasure to introduce our special guests for this evening. Don't get too excited. No, get excited, get excited. Judy Gold is a stand-up comedian, actress, television writer, and producer. She won 2 Daytime Emmy Awards. I'm sorry?
Save all that time for me.
Okay, actually, yours is quick compared to his, to be honest. Yeah. I'll be fast. She won 2 Daytime Emmy Awards for her work as a writer and producer on The Rosie O'Donnell Show and has starred in comedy specials on HBO, Comedy Central, and Logo. She has written and starred in 2 critically acclaimed off-Broadway hit shows, The Judy Show, My Life as a Sitcom, and 25 Questions for a Jewish Mother. This is what they gave me.
Who gave that to you? Because they're fire.
I'm not gonna say. You could. I'll tell you after. She's the author of Yes, I Can Say That. When They Come for the Comedians, We're All in Trouble. She is currently the host of the hit podcast Kill Me Now. Did you bring your Zweibel, Judy?
I did not.
Too bad. Alan Zweibel, on the other hand, has won 5 Emmy Awards for his work in television, which includes the first 5 seasons of Saturday Night Live, It's Gary Shandling Show, which he co-created and produced, The Late Show with David Letterman, and Curb Your Enthusiasm. His theatrical work includes his collaboration with Billy Crystal on the Tony-winning play 700 Sundays, Martin Short's Fame Becomes Me, and 6 off-Broadway plays, including Bunny Bunny, Gilda Radner, a sort of romantic comedy, which he adapted from his best-selling book. He has written 11 books, including his cultural memoir Laugh Lines, My Life Helping Funny People Be Funnier, the 2006 Thurber Prize-winning novel The Other Shulman, the popular children's book Our Tree Named Steve, and a parody of the Passover Haggadah, For This We Left Egypt, which he wrote with Dave Barry and Adam Mansbach. Alan's humor has appeared in The New Yorker, Esquire, The Atlantic, The New York Times, and Mad Magazine, among others. Alan received an honorary doctorate in 2009 from the State University of New York and has been honored with a Lifetime Achievement Award by the Writers Guild of America. Please join me in welcoming Judy Gold and Alan Zweibel.
So, where do you want us to sit?
Wherever you'd like.
Okay. Hello.
Alan's bio is longer than Milton Berle's cigar.
Milton Berle's cigar.
That's funny.
Well, look at this, like Woodstock. There's a lot of people here.
So, welcome everyone. I want to start with something I saw yesterday on Twitter. I saw a tweet from the Jewish Women's Archive. So
I love them.
Shout out to the Jewish Women's Archive. They were promoting a new comedy podcast, and their tweet said, "What's more Jewish than comedy?" So this association with Jews and comedy is part of what we're interested in here. And I thought to myself, what if you substituted a different ethnic group in that sentence? Could you say, what's more Chinese than comedy? What's more Albanian than comedy? So how does that work? What is this association? Why is it so deep? And what's happening here that you can actually say a sentence like that?
Judy, I think you can handle this beautifully. I really do.
Thank you. Well, if you think about who the funniest comedians are, they are outsiders, they are marginalized people, and Jews, people always ask me, why are there so many Jewish comedians? I always have said that, when you get bar, bat, b'nai, or b, or whatever I'm trying to keep it clean. I know, I didn't say it. But when you
I think it would be okay.
When you become a bar, bat, or b, or whatever, mitzvah, what is your job? Your job is to take this text that has been around for thousands of years and make it your own, right? Show people a different point of view. And that's what a joke is looking at something from another perspective that no one's ever heard before. So I think we're critical thinkers, so that is, part of the reason why we love comedy. But also, it's a coping mechanism, and it's a weapon. And we're skilled at using it both ways. And, we have used it to get out of a lot of situations and to create a lot of great situations. And we're funny. We're miserable.
we've been kicked out of every country in the world, okay? And how do we survive? We survive by deflecting. You know, you go right through when came over, even in Europe. You look at the short stories of Shalom Aleichem, okay, and go back even to England, okay? And this is not a Jewish thing, but Jonathan Swift with Gulliver's Travel, A Modest Proposal, Monty Python. It's always about hitting up. When you're oppressed, the way you deal with it, you hit up. Okay, and so with Python, it was the Queen, all right? It was the Catholic Church, and with us, it was a mechanism. You look at Fiddler on the Roof, okay? There was the Tsarist Russia, okay? And they were making jokes as they were leaving Anatevka. Now, I'm sure that the real people weren't doing that, okay? But at the same time, I would bet you if you read Shalom Aleichem's Tevye the Milkman, it's really funny. And that's the way we deal with it, you know? There's a wonderful documentary that Fern Perlstein did. We should talk.
The Last Laugh.
It's called The Last Laugh, Humor in the Holocaust. You're in that too, right?
Yes.
We're all in that, but we're all in it talking about, those are two words you really don't hear a lot together in the same sentence, humor and Holocaust. But aside from all of us giving testimony how far you can go with humor, like Mel Brooks, I remember saying that when he did The Producers, he did the Nazis, but he stopped short of the camps, right? But the main spine of the movie is following this Auschwitz survivor named Renee something.
There were two. One had a sense of humor, and one
the other
didn't.
one was really dour. And the one who had a sense of humor, she told us that you needed a sense of humor to survive the camps. And there was footage of Jews putting on shows for the SS, and she said at the very, very end of this documentary to her friend who also went through it and was real dour, she said, come on, smile. If Hitler was alive today and he saw the life that I live, I would have the last laugh, hence the title, The Last Laugh. And I would really recommend this if you haven't seen that documentary.
Yeah, that's a great documentary. There's also this book, it's very dense. It's called Humor in the Holocaust, It Kept Us Alive by Chaya Ostauer, is that her name? And there's a quote from one of the survivors who said that if it wasn't for humor, we all would have committed suicide. It made us feel human. And I think that, you know, my mother would always say, if we weren't laughing, we'd be crying. And you can either look at the macro or look at the micro. And we look at the micro to survive, because if you looked at the macro, you'd be in a fetal position, you know, rocking back and forth and crying. But we are survivors, and we're gonna survive what we're going through right now, too.
All right, so we got to the Holocaust pretty quickly. So, you know, you said that one of the Jewish rite of passage is a bar, bat mitzvah, b'nai mitzvah, whatever you want to call it. You know, this is a situation where you take a kid and you stick them in front of an audience and they have to give a talk.
Right.
So, you know, obviously not all Jews are funny, yet during the 20th century, majority of comedians were Jewish. So everything you talked about now about survival and how we use it as you know, mechanisms for defense and these kinds of things have something to do with that, but I don't think it answers the question as to why there are so many Jewish comedians. You know, is it like there were a lot of Jews in the garment industry, so it was sort of a localized profession that they were involved in? Is it representational? Jews saw Jews doing it, so they thought, oh, I could do that. You know, for instance, when you got into comedy, how did that happen? Did you see Jews on TV doing this, and did that play a role?
Oh, yeah, I watched the Ed Sullivan Show, and our parents used to take us up to the Catskills on holiday weekends, and I'd sneak into the nightclubs because I was 12, 13 years old, and I'd sit in the back, and I'd watch these comedians, and 10 years later, after I graduated college, I'd be in those same rooms, and I was writing for those same comedians. $7 a joke, by the way, that's what they paid. That was the going rate in 1972. $7 a joke.
We think it's 9 now. 9 times?
Oh, yeah. No,
Yeah.
But how did that happen? How did you say, I'm going to write jokes for comedians?
Listen, you know, we can psychoanalyze the whole thing as a coping mechanism and all these other terms. It's a cultural thing. It's a mindset. I grew up in a house which was not dissimilar from other people's houses, Jewish kids' houses who are my age. Listen to Alan Sherman records. Vaughn Meader did The First Family. Mel Brooks and Carl Reiner, The 2,000-Year-Old Man, and they were funny. There was a show on that was called That Was the Week That Was, and there was The Tonight Show. And so I just said, gee, I watched the Dick Van Dyke Show. I was like 12 years old, and here's this good-looking guy, Dick Van Dyke. He's got this really pretty wife, Mary Tyler Moore. They got a son, Richie, so he's got a family, a really nice house in New Rochelle, and he spent his days at the office lying on a couch, joking around with Buddy and Sally. So I said to my parents, I want to do that. What, am I stupid? That's what I want to do. You know, so I think it has to do with the culture of the household, the culture of the community also. You know what I mean? If you want to get to the root of it, you know, look, old Jew is walking down the street, Nazi Germany, 1941, car pulls up, door opens, out steps Hitler, takes out his gun, points to a pile of dog shit on the sidewalk and said, Jew, get down on your knees, start eating. So the Jew is on his knees, he starts eating the dog shit, he looks up, knocks the gun out of Hitler's hand. Now the Jew has the gun, he says, you, Hitler, get down on your knees, start eating. So Hitler starts eating. Old Jew walks home, says to his wife, you'll never guess who I had lunch with today. I hope that answered your question, I really do.
It answered a question. So, Judy, what about you?
You know, Alan, as you can tell, is way older than me. So I was watching different shows. I remember, for me, you know, I would watch these variety shows, and I would see Phyllis Diller, I would see, I mean, Joan Rivers to me, Toady Fields to me was, I mean, she died when I was 16, but I loved her. I thought, here are these women who are fearless. And especially Joan, fearless, like every topic, there was nothing that she didn't touch. And I remember thinking, here's this brash Jewish woman sitting with the whitest guy, Johnny Carson, from Nebraska, and he thinks she's hilarious. They have nothing in common except he just thinks she is hilarious. And I was like, that is what, you know, I want to do. I want to, and she didn't have anyone to look at when she was a little girl to say, you know, that's what I want to do. But for me, it really, you know, we didn't hug in my we can go into my whole psychodrama, but getting a laugh or saying something clever was like the greatest thing in my house growing up. So I don't know. I mean, we're funny people. And even the way when you read the Torah, it's, you know, they have the trope there. It's all, you say it like this, everything ends like that. Even every bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah speech, I want to thank my blah, blah, blah. They always start with a joke. But yeah, I don't know. It's...
All I know is I feel really shitty now that you were never hugged.
It's okay. It's okay.
Go ahead.
Plus, also, I was in high school when SNL started, and that was just one of the greatest things that ever happened to me.
Yeah.
Happened to the world, but to be able to, yeah.
It's hard to believe. I mean, next year will be the 50th year that this show is on, and
oh, I was in junior high school. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I was 9. I was like a prodigy, and you know, but a lot of our stuff. But back then, we couldn't do a lot of Jewish stuff because it was, you know, there was no cable. There was certainly no streaming. NBC, CBS, ABC. That was television. There was not even Fox, right? So we just expanded the boundaries a little by little. There was one writer on the show, Rosie Schuster. You remember her? You remember those of you who are older, which is like a lot of you. On the Ed Sullivan Show, there was this very unfunny comedy team from Canada, Wayne and Schuster.
Yeah.
Okay, Schuster was her father, okay? She was Lorne's first wife, but she was a riot, and she pitched a joke once, a sketch. I don't think it even made it to rehearsal, but the 10 worst Hanukkah gifts ever, okay? And the #1 worst Hanukkah gift ever was the Hanukkah that they gave Anne Frank a set of drums, okay? Now,
That's hilarious.
yeah, I live to be 100. I can't write that joke, you know?
I love that.
I could see why it didn't make it to air.
Yeah.
But you said Saturday Night Live didn't have a lot of Jewish material, but a lot of Jews worked there. And when I was a kid, I remember the first Jewish bit was Jewish jeans, which I think was with Gilda.
Yeah, that was I don't know if it was because I didn't write it. So I really give a shit, No, I don't know if there was a fight to get it on. I don't know if there was any sort of censors that they had to deal with, because I knew that when I wrote stuff, you did whatever you could to be clever about to get something on. Okay, so that I don't know. But yeah, Jewish jeans. And then Gilda, we did a lot of Jewish stuff with, and we fought for it, and Lauren's Jewish, so, we got what we wanted.
That's not, Lauren's Jewish, but, the people that throughout my career have said, you're too Jewish, dye your hair blonde, straighten it, don't do so many Jewish, we're all Jews telling me not to be so Jewish.
Right.
Yeah.
That's like, Seinfeld originally was shot down by Jewish executives.
Right.
And championed by a Gentile executive. I think that's a standard thing in the business. Too Jewish isn't a quality that people value.
That Jewish jeans was like iconic for Jewish girls. I'm telling you, it was amazing.
So, how do you remember, Judy? Do you remember writing your first joke?
Well, the first time I did stand-up, it was on a dare, and I was in college, and I did write a joke. I had to do it on my dorm floor in the lounge, and I had to write material about the people who lived on the floor. And my first joke was about this. We had an Orthodox Jew, and he would leave every Thursday night and come back every Sunday. This is a co-ed. Everyone's just smoking pot and drinking and other things. And I remember writing a joke about, I have to get this done quickly because it's not even funny, but it was my first laugh. Mitchell, Jewy Jew, has to go home for whatever it was, And I don't remember the exact joke. It was funny at the time, but and that was my first thing, was about this guy who had to, this Jew, because I felt safe. I felt like I could joke about that. But yeah, that's how I think like a Jew. I think in Jew.
And now, wait, what about your first $7 joke?
Well, my first $7 joke, a Catskill comedian named Morty Gunty.
Oh, I remember.
Remember that name? He called me up. I'm 21. He said, can you write me some jokes about sperm banks? I'm 21, like I gave a fuck about sperm banks, okay? So I wrote that they have a new thing now called sperm banks, which is just like an ordinary bank, except here, after you make a deposit, you lose interest. Okay?
is a great joke.
So that made me a professional because I had $7 in the bank. But the first Jewish joke I ever wrote, which I got $18 for, I got chai for this joke, was about a Jewish porno film, which was really unusual, especially the orgy scene, because the men were on one side of the room and the women were on the other. There was like a feeding frenzy for that one.
All right, you win the first joke contest. Thank you.
Excellent. All right, so what are some of the cultural characteristics that make Jewish humor distinctive? All right, I made a short list of them, and you can comment on that. So I started with illness. Illness, dissatisfaction, fear, complaint.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, my parents pretty much cornered the market on that. I think that just like Paul Reiser said that, is anything okay? Yeah, it is a lot of whining. It's a lot of, and if you did go up to the Borscht Belt in those days, it was a lot of complaining. And even as it evolved to, let's say, remember Alan King? Like he was like a higher level. He was the guy. But I remember growing up on Long Island, he sounded like everybody else's father, except he got to go on Ed Sullivan and complain about, airlines and insurance companies and mowing the lawn. And he was a fat cat with the cigar, but he complained about the same things. And when we came along with SNL, he was the standard. That was the that was the popular kind of cultural thing. And we came along and we had spray paint on the walls of what was then called the RCA building. It looked like graffiti that said Saturday Night Live on it, and that was basically our take on it was our turn to do it. But still, at its root, I used to go to Alan King's office all the time. I used to go to the Friars Club where those old Jewish comics would hang out, and they were a riot. They were really funny. Morty Gunty once took me to the Friars Club, and I used to hang out at the bar and sell jokes. They would meet, and he took me into the big room, the big dining room there. Remember Gene Balos?
Yes.
Gene Balos was an old, sad sack-looking Jewish comedian, big jowls, and he took me over to where Gene was with a bunch of people eating, and he said, "Gene, I'd like to introduce you to a funny writer. This is Alan." And Gene stood up, and he said, "You're funny, huh?" I guess so. He said, "You know who's also funny?" Who? He says, "My dentist." And he opens his mouth and like 30 chiclets come out like they're his teeth. And to this very day, I don't know if he walked around with 30 chiclets waiting to be introduced to somebody, or he saw me coming and he just started putting chiclets in there.
So funny.
How funny is that? But you go...
I loved the Friars Club was. I would eat lunch there. I'd see Henny Youngman in the corner by himself every day at the same time. And he would have you'd look over and he'd have like a fork coming out of his ear or a knife coming out of his and just sitting there eating as if nothing was going on. It was really, that was such a special place.
Henny Youngman, the first week or so, those guys were just wired differently than us, that generation. The first week that I belonged to the Friars Club, I was walking down the street. It was on 55th between Madison and Park. And on this particular day, there was nobody on that street. I don't know if it was a Saturday. I don't know why nobody was there. So I make the turn off of Madison to go to the Friars Club onto 55th. About 100 feet in front of me, out of this doorway, steps Henny Youngman. Now, he doesn't see me. So as far as he's concerned, he's alone. That's an important part of this story, okay? He walks across the street. Right, as soon as he gets to the curb where the Friars Club was to step on the curb, a pigeon fluttered down, landed by his feet. He looked at it and said, "Any mail for me?" He thought he was alone. He was talking to a fucking bird, okay?
That's hilarious.
But those guys did that.
Yeah.
That's what they did. I don't know anybody who would do that. Do you know anybody sort of our age or younger? I'm serious, who's got that gene in them to do that.
No. I mean, I would write it down, but I wouldn't say it out loud.
Yeah,
I'd be like, oh, pigeon, yeah.
Well, writing it down is one thing.
Right.
Talk to the bird.
I would say Bob Mankoff is like that, the former cartoon editor from the New Yorker. I spent time with him.
I don't know him personally.
I spent time with him, and joking to him was like a tick. He couldn't stop. Every sentence was a joke, and so there are people like that.
I would find that annoying.
It was entertaining during the first 2 hours.
Then you wanted to kill yourself, right?
Well,
or him.
I wouldn't go that far. So these are amazing stories.
Wait, can I just add one thing about the Catskills? So when I started doing stand-up in the early 80s, and we would do the late show. There was the regular show in the big showroom where it was the best of the best. And then the younger comics got to do this midnight show.
And this was where?
11 o'clock show, huh?
This is where, what resort?
Grossingers, Kutchers, we would, it was a Saturday night, really late show.
Was it the lounge?
Yes, that lounge. And so, and the thing is, that these clubs were all inclusive, so they didn't have to pay for the show. So they felt free enough to get up to tell you, you had to be so good. Here are these tired Jews who just had their midnight snack, and they didn't pay for the show, and we became really. It was the hardest show to do of the week, and it really made us strong comedians. Because yes, we love to laugh, but you better write a damn good joke for the Jews to laugh.
Well, remember Freddie Roman?
Oh, of course.
So what I would do is I lived in Long Island with my parents. On a Friday, I'd take my mom and dad's car. I'd drive to New City, which is where a lot of the comedians lived in Rockland County, because it was halfway between Manhattan and the Catskills, okay? So I'd sit with a guy like Freddie Roman, write some jokes, have dinner with him and his family, and then go up, watch him do an 8 o'clock show, watch him do a 10 o'clock show, and then we'd end up midnight, let's say, at the Raleigh in the lounge.
Yeah, the Raleigh, that's right.
Okay, and because it was so late, and because no kids were allowed, they were really disgusting.
Yeah.
They were really fun and disgusting. I remember Shecky Green opened his act. Now, he didn't build to this joke. He opened with a joke about his brother-in-law, who's a proctologist. He said he should have been a gynecologist. Schmuck missed having a good time by this much. And then he got dirty, okay? But that's the way those were.
It's like they let loose. And then they would introduce these young comics, and it was tough. It was tough, but it was great.
So I understand also that you initially started out as a comic, or you tried to.
Jesus. I got tired of writing for these Catskill guys, and I looked around, and the Catskills, the hotels were starting to close. They hung on, even when they were operating in the red, hoping that they would be revived with gambling coming up to the region, and it would resuscitate it like it had done with Atlantic City. Well, that never happened, and so where those guys, where the Red Buttons and the Alan Kings and Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis, all those guys would use it as a place to showcase, and they would get their own TV shows. It wasn't going to happen by the time I got there. I got there, the guys who were left behind, basically. So I took all the jokes that they wouldn't buy from me, because I figured this is not a career place for me. I learned how to write a joke, and I'm very grateful. They were very nice to me, but I took all the jokes they wouldn't buy, and I made it into a stand-up act for myself. So there were 2 clubs in the city at the time, one called The Improvisation, and the other one called Catch a Rising Star. And my plan was to go on stage, deliver the jokes, with the hopes that a manager or an agent would come in, like the material, and want to represent me to get a job in TV, which is what I wanted to do. The first week that I'm there, I meet another guy who's just starting out. His name is Billy Crystal, okay? He lived about 4 towns away from us on Long Island. We became fast friends. He would pick me up every night in his little blue Volkswagen. We'd drive into the city, tell our jokes, and on the way back, listen to the tapes and, give each other constructive criticism, 8-track, those tapes, okay? And I'm about 4 months into this experiment of mine, and one night I'm having the hardest time in the world. It's like 1 a.m. making these 6 drunks from Des Moines laugh. And I get off the stage and I go to the bar and I'm just hanging my head, waiting for Billy to be done so I can have a ride home, when this guy comes in, sits next to me and just starts staring at me. And I finally go, what? What are you doing? What do you want? He said, you're the worst comedian I've ever seen in my life. I said, well, thank you. This is going to really help my ego right now. He says, but your material's not bad. Did you write it? And I said, yes. And he said, can I see more? And I didn't even ask who it was. I would have shown it to like a gardener at this point. It ends up, this is Lorne Michaels, okay? And he's going from club to club, looking for writers and actors for this new show that would premiere in the fall. So I went back to my parents' house on Long Island, and I typed up what I thought were 1,100 of my best jokes. And I remember I had my meeting with him, and I was so nervous. I didn't even know what to wear. I never went to an interview before. I'm going, well, young, hip producer, young, hip show. Oh, I'll dress young, I'll dress hip. I put on my father's maroon polyester leisure suit, okay? I looked like a big blood clot sitting on the Long Island Railroad, and I came into the city and for my meeting with Lorne, and I went upstairs, and I sat on the bed. He pulled up a chair, and I gave him this.
You sat on the bed?
You know something? Yeah, I sat on the bed. But
that changes everything.
I got to revive.
You didn't walk in and say, why is there a bed here in his office?
No, this was the Plaza Hotel.
Oh, okay. You said his office.
Did I say office?
Yeah.
Okay, let's take 2.
Someone said no.
I got to the Plaza Hotel. I went to his...
Huh? Okay, then you don't have to say anything, all right? This is what I'm talking about. Okay. You have to be the one. Okay.
I went... I'm going to get this out, I swear.
I'm sorry.
I went to his room, okay? Sat on the bed. He pulled up a chair. I gave him this tome of 1,100 jokes. He opened it. He read the first joke, and he went, uh-huh. Then he closed the book, and he gave me a job. One joke.
What was the joke?
To show you how long ago this was, from the reference points in the joke, I had written a joke saying that the post office was about to issue a stamp commemorating prostitution in the United States. 10-cent stamp. You want to lick it, it's a quarter, okay? That was the joke.
Well, what's amazing is I've told that joke. It's a great joke.
Well, now you know where it came from.
Right, it's amazing. It's incredible. So, Judy,
no one cares about me. It's all about Alan growing up in 1940. I'm sorry.
After you wrote did your college open mic, and you wrote your Mitchell joke, where does it go after that? What?
Well, I got my first laugh, and then someone said, it was like 82, maybe 81, and it was starting the boom where every place, like Ramada Inn, every place had stand-up. And someone said, my friend runs this restaurant, and I went into this, it was called the Charter House. It was in New Jersey, and it was a fish place, and they were doing stand-up. And I was like, I was so nervous, and I went and I had to write an act that other people, not the people who lived on my floor, and I was so physically ill. And I went on stage and I forgot everything I was going to say. And I remember there was a woman with a huge bouffant, and I started saying, "Oh, that's my mother over there. She's a member of the B-52." Like, I didn't even know what to say. But I got them, and I had never felt like that. I got my first laugh. I never felt like that about anything ever, and I just started. And then what happened was I was at Rutgers, and they were doing this thing called campus comedy, where Bill Sheft, who was the head writer for Letterman, Adrian Tolsch, his wife, who ran the open mic night at Catch a Rising Star, and Larry Amorose, who is one of the funniest writers. Yeah. And it was the three of them, and it was called Campus Comedy, Comics from Catch a Rising Star. And I won something where I got to do 5 minutes with them, and I went on stage, and the three of them said, "You're really funny," which, I mean, they were professionals. And I was 19, and Adrian said, "Come to Catch a Rising Star on Monday nights, and I'll put you on." And I, every Monday, went to Catch a Rising Star and waited to go on. I never got on. But I would go anywhere to do it. It was this, I just was chasing that feeling, and I still get that feel, like, to this day, when I, get on the subway to go down to the Comedy Cellar to try out a new bit. It is just as exciting as it was the first time I got on stage. I love the whole process.
When you became a comedian professionally, what did your parents say?
Fantastic. No, they hated it. They wanted me to be a music teacher. Get your teaching degree. Get your teaching degree. But I always worked to make enough money that I didn't have to ask them for money, and I was a typesetter during the day, and then I would go out and do sets, and then I started going on the road, and I would make like $600 or $500. I'd have to go away for a week, but I just wanted to be a great comic, and if you stop asking them for money, they really have no say in anything. And then my father died when I was, before, he never got to see me on TV, but we found this folder, and he had every little article that had my name in it, and so they were very supportive. And then my mother literally wrote my act for 30 years. I mean, I would call her. I'm like, "Oh, I got to write new material." Yeah. And we would just have these. I would literally say verbatim what she said to me on the phone. And
for example.
Okay, yes, there was this one, I don't know if you remember, well, I'm sure a lot of you do. In 1990, maybe, there was this guy called the Dart Man, and he was throwing darts at women's asses. Do you remember this? Yes, he was in the subway, and he was throwing darts at women's asses. And everyone was worried because it was during the AIDS crisis, so they thought, but anyway, and then the New York Post was like, "Beware of the Dart Man," and I got home, and there was a message on my answering machine: "Judith, wear thick clothes." It was like that pretty much every day. I used to play an answering machine message that she left me because we were on the telephone, and I was at my agent's office, and we got disconnected pre-cell phones, and I didn't call her back, and she thought I was dead in my apartment. I used to play this message. She's like screaming, "I'm going to call the neighbor. I have to call the police." So long. And it was just constant. Then she got to the nursing home, and it was, "Judith, I have nothing. So please, when you come, bring a hunk of cheese." And really, I love that one. But it was, she was very, and so, and this mother-daughter relationship, it transcended Judaism because everyone has a mother figure. And And it was universal. It became universal. People loved it.
Answering machines became a big thing.
Right.
Because I remember when Robin and I first got married, I had an outgoing message that I said, Alan and Robin are at home right now, which I'm very happy about because I just broke in and I'm stealing all their jewelry, okay? Okay, so Robin and I come home this one afternoon, play back the messages, right? And I hear Robin's mother's voice going, oh my God. Like as if the guy who broke in answered the phone and he announced what he was doing. Next message was, see what I mean, Sam? As if the guy answered a second time, said it verbatim the same way. Okay? Then you hear Robin's father saying, I'll handle this. And we sit down, we're watching TV. 20 minutes later, the cops indeed did show. I swear to God, I had to show on my driver's license that I lived there. Oh my God. Yeah. So Jews with answer machines were a thing.
That is so funny.
So, none of that answered the question as to how...
Oh, my God.
Oh, shit. You and your questions. What's it now?
All right. How's comedy writing changed, and especially in concerning Jews, or Jewish topics, let's say? Perhaps it hasn't.
I don't think that it has. I think that, Judy, you might disagree with me, but I think that we are more accepting of it. And I think more people know what the culture is, so they understand it. And I don't think that we have to censor ourselves the way we once had to. And I think it's more important now, as you said earlier, given what's going on in the world, and go to campuses and what's Gaza and all that stuff. I think it's more important than ever to keep on churning it out the way that we are. So no,
I have to.
You disagree?
Yeah, because I still go out and do sets, and I have to say that since October 7th, in my 42 years of performing, I have never, you do a benign Jewish joke, it's never, they get quiet. Their reaction, I've never experienced anything like this before. And comics are now saying, I'm not going to do my Jewish material, it's not worth it.
Okay, who's the objection coming from? Jewish people, or people think that Jewish people would object to that?
Well, I've gotten Free Palestine screamed at me.
From a specific joke?
Just if I do a Jew, I'm a Jew. It's so hard to, this is one of those things that's so hard to navigate. It's interesting that there are a portion of those who are like, oh, I'm not allowed to laugh at that. And while the Jews are hysterically laughing,
Have you seen Spam a lot again?
I didn't see it the second time.
Okay. You will go back to it, all right? It was really funny the first time, and now it's 19 years later, and there's a lot of Jewish stuff in there. And there's an interesting thing that takes place is there's a millisecond as if the audience is processing, am I allowed to laugh at that?
Right.
And they do.
But that's been happening for a while.
I understand that, but you had asked about writing, and I don't think that when it comes to writing, when we're alone, there is the kind of thing, I know that sometimes the instinct always was to be the first draft you write, whatever is funny, then you're going to modify it, and you'll get notes and all of that. There is a little bit where you're going, oh, Jesus, they're not going to like this.
Well, that's
but you still do it, though. I still do it.
Right, but it's now, some people think it's a good thing. Like, oh, they're going to take it. The comic, there's no comedy without intent. What is the comic trying to say? There's nuance, there's context. But it's these people, you hear one word and don't listen to the full thought. I'm a Jew. Like, I'll get on stage now, not a great time right now for us. And you see who. It's some of it is hate, and I get off stage. I do. I'm still very outwardly and proudly Jewish on stage. I don't shy away from it. I talk about Israel. I talk about everything. And I will see people go like this. And then I will have people, as I walk off stage, say thank you or write to me and say, I've been so depressed to hear someone talking about their Jewishness on stage. It was so healing for me. Thank you for wearing this. You know, it's both sides. And then there are the politically correct people who are like, I'm going to be offended at everything. Yeah.
People, I mean, you know, I was in an elevator once with Mel Brooks.
Okay, here we go.
Okay, I got to break this up a little bit,
right,
okay?
Yeah.
And we're going down and we're talking, the elevator stops, doors open, and a Far Eastern woman with a sari, and she had a red dot in the middle of her head, and Mel looked at her and went, your coffee's ready. Okay. I hear laughter, and I heard a couple of people groan. That woman laughed, okay? I don't know what to tell you.
But that's what Gilbert used to say. I interviewed him for my book, and he said, the thing I don't understand is your involuntary action is to laugh, and now audiences are going, oh, right, not supposed to do that. And to me, you're not being a horrible person. It's a natural response. And I'm sorry, but yeah, we need laughter in this world. And, stop taking ourselves so seriously.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're right. We can't take ourselves so seriously. And if we're laughing and we're talking about it, and I know that this is easier said than done. I understand it. Because when I go out and I do my own speaking engagements, I can tell the difference. But it's also a big release also. People come up to you afterwards, thanks for making me laugh.
Right.
I think we just have to do what we do. And you're right about intent. That's really important, though.
Right.
What are we intending to do?
Right.
A Jew bought a house right next door to Rockefeller. And he bought the same car as Rockefeller. And he mowed his lawn the same way as Rockefeller. And he put the same retaining wall in front as Rockefeller had. And Rockefeller came over and he said, you think you're as good as I am, don't you? He says, no, I think I'm better. He goes, why? He says, well, first of all, I don't live next door to a fucking Jew. Now, what can we learn from that joke?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we learned that...
Have we answered any of his questions?
No, you haven't. So we learned that self-deprecation plays a significant role in Jewish humor.
Right, we do it before they get to it. They're not going to humiliate us.
Right.
We've got it done. We know, and that's the way we do it. And it's interesting. All right, now I'm going to really get into Holocaust. Ready? In 1934, shut up, but in 1934, and this is why dictators hate, this is why, Trump left the White House correspondent, he couldn't deal with that. In 1934, Hitler passed the Treachery Act. And it was comedians who were, like Cabaret, who were in the clubs in Germany, who were speaking the truth on stage. And Hitler passed this law saying that listening to or telling an anti-Nazi joke was punishable by imprisonment or death. Because there's nothing more powerful than humiliating someone. And he passed that in 1934, and the year before that, he started banning books. So I feel like we are in this a really precarious situation right now. And I do agree with you that, people are being more careful, but people are also closing their minds. There's a part of it that's like you're opening your mind, like, oh, that might be like they're offended by proxy. No. I feel like we're having less discourse, and we're going backwards, kind of. I think it was more Jewish before. I think people are shying away from the Jewishness now.
Well, yeah, I understand what you're saying. At the same time, I think it's most important that we continue to do what we've been doing.
Right.
Okay. I think we turn into the skid here, and we just keep going because, like you're saying, if you're talking about Hitler in '34 and what happened the year before and all of that, and you got a guy who may be president again, who's saying the things that he's saying about retaliating, and he said if you're Democrats who are Jews, you know.
Well, he wanted SNL investigated. You know, he has, and he's now talking about Jews and trying to split us up. It's terrible. I mean, I have a joke. I talk about Israel on stage, and like you just say the word Israel, and half the people hate you, right? And I've been to Israel. I have a joke about how, you know, it's a democracy. It's a very young country. Some of the people in the government are assholes. Oh my God, what country does that remind me of? Okay, and then I say, but you better laugh at this joke because he's been telling all these jokes and they've been getting like applause breaks, and I really want to kill myself. But I tell this joke about how I went to Israel, and recently I went last year for the third time, and I realized that in Israel there are things. It is a democracy. There are things you can do there that you can no longer do in the United States. So when I arrived, I said to my girlfriend Elisa, I said, "Oh, we're here. I think I'll get an abortion." It was a food baby, but even that, like it's a subversive thing, but it's true. It's a democracy, but even that, it would get a huge laugh. It would get a huge laugh on October 6th, and now it's like, no, I can't even talk about that. You can't even say that word, and that's where we're headed.
Right. Well, I think from your last book, there's an indication that comedians have been censored, forever.
Right.
And it's a constant problem that
because we're truth tellers.
Yeah. Right. Now, would either of you be willing to entertain questions from the audience?
Well, it depends on who asks them. Ask them.
Can we do that? Is that a thing that we can do?
Absolutely. You could just ask Alan to tell more jokes, and that'll be it.
They may have nothing to ask. Let's find out. Does anyone have a question?
Anyone?
Can we talk about the Jews?
No.
Do you ever worry that you run dry and you're not funny?
I think that I've realized that this evening. I'm like, oh my God, because I get really bored with my material. And I'm always reading and trying to, educate myself about things so I can write more material. And I mean, there are some times where you're just sitting there and nothing to say.
Sometimes the muses just, they take off, they go somewhere else. And I feel this a lot, that I've written my last joke, I've written my last book.
Isn't that sad when you think that?
I'll look at old stuff that I've written, and I'll go, I don't know if I could write that today.
Right.
So it's scary. It is scary. And it's an occupational hazard, and it's not specific to us. I remember if Neil Simon, in his the preface to one of his anthologies, he said his dream in life is to have his first draft be the one that's produced. The name of the book is Rewrites, okay? And it's really hard, and especially when we're doing this alone. If you work on a TV show, it's very communal. You're at a table, there's a writer's room, there's a synergy there of all these funny people being together. But when you're doing this by yourself, it's an unnatural act.
I love it. I love being in a writer's room.
Oh, the writer's room is
the
best.
It's the best, because even if you're not in the mood, someone will say something like, oh yeah, and you can,
Yeah.
This isn't a Jewish topic, but what's your thoughts about the current SNL?
Oh, the current SNL. Can you hear in the back?
The question was, what are your thoughts of the current SNL?
What are the thoughts about the current SNL? Oh, sorry, I'm not moderating. Okay. Current SNL.
I watch it usually on Tuesdays because I'm an old Jew now and I DVR it. Okay, I can't watch it live. Something, it's hit or miss. I watch it because it's my alma mater. I root for it the way I do my old high school football team. I can't play for them anymore, but I want them to win. I think that every time you think that, okay, they've they've run it out and all that. Kate McKinnon comes along, and you get, Cecily Strong. You get all these funny people. They're out there, and I think that they may even have a harder job than we did, because when we did, like I said, there were only 3 networks. Now there's 1,000 different outlets, okay? And you're not going to dazzle anybody. You're not going to you're not going to even turn a head if you say something which is off color. I think the job that they have to do is be wittier, okay, because you have Fallon on earlier in the week, and you've got Colbert, and you got all that. So I think, it's hit or miss, but I root for them.
Look at who they're going to always be compared to previous casts.
Yeah. So, I'm not going to say anything negative about it because I know what the process is. And the fact is they reconstitute themselves every few years on live television, and they find a new equilibrium. So I'm rooting for them.
I agree. I'm 100%. There are times where, you know that a news story is going to happen. It happens on Tuesday, and you're like, oh, I can't wait to see what they do with that. And sometimes I'm like, oh, they just missed it. But it's part of the, comedy is the only art form where the audience is the major part of the creative process, because you could think something's funny and then you bring it in front of an audience and you get the response I got this evening. So but it's true, no painter stops mid-painting and says brings some friends over and is like, what do you think of the tree? Should I move the tree over here? Should I put a bird? But we don't know, we don't know where the line is until we've crossed it. We really need you, and then you turn on us. So that's the
and a singer is always going to get an applause at the end.
Right.
Okay. We know if a joke doesn't work, you're not laughing. We know immediately. And
it's personal.
Yeah, it's really personal. So it's a different art form, and I do think it's an art form.
Speaking of crossing.
So Judy, do you find that the audiences who might turn on you for the Jew stuff root for you for the gay stuff? People.
We just want to repeat the question so everyone hears.
Okay, go.
She asked if people who turn on you for the Jewish material root for you for the gay material or some other material.
I have had much of the entire gay community turn on me for the Jew, for being pro-Israel, or being a Zionist, or thinking Israel has a right to exist. It's, and I mean, I just got a DM. I loved you as a child. I watched your special over 100 times. You meant so much to me, and now look at you. And it's constant. And it's funny because I was one of the first mainstream comics to come out, if not the first, there were, thank you. But there were other comics who were working in gay clubs and they were out. But I was working in straight clubs, and I had a child, and I started talking about my family. And I fought for the rights of the LGBT. I can't go on, but and I represented, and and now it's so disheartening. This whole victim mentality. These are the victims and these are the perpetrators, and all Jews think alike. It's unbelievable. It's really unbelievable to me. So Dana, it's been really hard having this whole community, turn on you as if you're,
Hi. Years ago, you could have movies like Kentucky Fried Movie or Airplane. You can't make those movies anymore. The censorship and the sensitivity and the danger of transgressing over here. How does that curtail the comedic process these days?
Where's that voice coming from?
Oh my God!
There. I kept looking over here.
I know. I'm like there, and
bunch
no
of
one's moving their lips.
ventriloquists over here.
Yeah.
Oh, it's over there. Okay.
Yeah.
It was such a mellifluous voice.
I know.
Thank you.
No, dulcet tones. Yes.
So, did you hear the question?
Yeah. I think we already answered.
What was the question?
About these movies and like Airplane and all that. You can't do those anymore. But you have to realize that as words have different meanings, things have happened in the world that change things. Some things aren't funny anymore. The world's gotten smaller. I still think it's funny, but my kids don't. They're like, it's generational. Don't you think?
Oh, God, yeah. I remember trying to show my kids when they were real young Marx Brothers movies.
Yeah.
And first of all, it was like black and white.
Right.
With this, like lepers, And as they got older, okay, they started to appreciate it. But there's a sophistication that you acquire where you appreciate something given the context and the time that it was produced. And if you look at it like that, if you look at AMC, what they have is a lot of TMC, right? At night they show those old movies, and with Mankiewicz, is that his name, Ben?
Yeah.
I really like him because what he was forced to do, and he preserved a lot of movies because of this. Guess Who's Coming to Dinner? Now, if you remember that movie, what kind of an outrage it was a real breakthrough that Sidney Poitier was coming over with the daughter of Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn, right? But he explained before they showed it, they didn't want to show it. He said, let me set it up. And he said, this was 1967 and this and that. And he put it in a context and you appreciated it for it.
Right.
So I think that there's a certain amount of lack of education versus education when it comes to appreciating. I was having lunch with some of our mutual friends today, and I was saying, cancel culture is such horseshit. It should be, in the sense that if you have a body of work, look at when it was produced and written. Don't play with its integrity with what is now a set of rules, okay? PC and stuff. And I just think that that's wrong.
It's true. There are jokes that I did 25 years ago, 30 years, that I would never do today because the world is a different place. And if we erase all those movies, we're erasing history. And that's why all of this banning is disgusting. It is disgusting. We're going to just repeat the same mistakes. Can't say this word, you can't tell that story, I'm triggered. Too bad. Guess what? Every safe space has a door to the real world, okay? Life is not easy.
Okay.
Does someone have a mic? Okay.
As a Jewish atheist, I wanted to ask professionals like yourself, is it okay to make jokes about Jewish religion and its practitioners? Is religion off limits like Holocaust, or is it not?
Okay, you need to be on a cartoon or something. Doesn't he? I love the way you speak. Okay. Can you make jokes about I do when I'm in front of Jewish audiences that'll understand those jokes. I think as a comic, we're at the point, I have a line for myself, and the line is, if the audience is laughing for the wrong reason, then I will not. And I know, every comic knows when they're up there if the audience is laughing for the right reason. So if I'm telling a Jewish joke and I think they're laughing at it for the wrong reason, that's my line to call them out and not do that material. But you got to really know your audience. And there's jokes I do in front of Jews that I could never, non-Jews wouldn't even understand.
This just reminds me, the other day I was listening to Gilbert Gottfried's album, Dirty Jokes, and on this album, he does a version of The Aristocrats, which is a famous joke. You could look it up.
It was a film.
And it was a film as well, and Judy was in it.
My mother was not happy.
And during Gilbert's telling of The Aristocrats, where he's describing all kinds of monstrous sex acts, he integrates the text of Chad Gadya. And it's a real moment of brilliance, of integrating some Jewish religious text with the aristocrats. And I don't know if anybody but Gilbert could do that, but it's really, I recommend it if you want to look it up.
Gilbert was a genius. I mean, I was on this stage with him you said it was 7 years ago, and Gilbert, you know, there was such a mind at work there. He was really smart, but I didn't know him, that we weren't friends. I was living in California when I knew who he was. So at his funeral, I was asked to eulogize him, but Susie Essman was telling personal Gilbert stories and about how cheap Gilbert was.
Yes.
Supposedly, they were all in a car, a bunch of comics, and they drove down to Philly or something like that, and they all appeared someplace. And now on the way back, right, Gilbert, they realized, was the only one who didn't pay for gas or a thing. And they said, Gilbert, this is George Washington Bridge. This is the last shot you have to be like a person. And so he took out of his pocket these crumbled bills, and he went, "So long, fellas." And he gave it to the toll taker. I mean, but he was just this really sweet, funny guy.
He was the greatest.
Can I first of all, I just want to say this has been fantastic.
I'm having that thing again where I can't see who's talking.
Yeah.
Okay.
Over here.
Oh, there. Okay.
So one very well-known Jewish comedian, Woody Allen, has not yet been mentioned on this stage. And speaking of cancel culture, I'm just wondering whether he has been canceled.
You know something? I'm going to take the plunge here, okay? You look at that body of work that this man did, over 50 films, comedy albums, his books, right? And I was not in that attic. I don't know what happened, but it would be a shame for our culture that if you took whatever you believe happened and you just canceled that body of work, because we're going to be the losers that way, okay? It's great. I grew up idolizing him, all right? I just did.
I can't watch Bill Cosby anymore.
Cosby I can't watch either.
No, I can't.
Well, Wagner didn't get canceled.
Wagner did not get canceled. Chanel, Coco Chanel was a Nazi.
Oh, you watch
go
it
to
on
synagogue
TV, yeah.
and everyone's in a Chanel suit.
We have a couple questions from the Zoom.
Enthusiasm.
We have a couple questions from the Zoom audience, if that's all right.
Oh, okay.
How would panelists advise breaking into the comedy scene as a young Jew today?
How? What?
I don't even know where that voice came from.
I'm over here.
It's Ben. It's over there.
Ben, okay.
How would a young Jew go about breaking into the comedy scene today?
Go to an open mic. You got to do what you know. You got to talk about what you know. You have to. You can't shy away from things. You have to speak the truth. You have to get in front of all different kinds of audiences. You have to fail. Just do it. It shouldn't matter that you're a Jew.
Yeah, I don't think there were separate rules for that. You just go and do what people do. All right? I don't think it's gotten to the point where, okay, Jews, you go that way, you know?
Curb your enthusiasm.
I've been having protests at some of my shows.
You showed me that.
Yeah.
Scary.
On a lighter note, do you have a Teflon joke, a joke you go to that always works no matter where you are and what the audience is like?
When I do speaking engagements, I know that stamp joke, if you want to lick it, it's a quarter, is going to really work. But it's a really interesting thing with that, because I speak at colleges also. So I get 17 and 18-year-old kids. When I get up to that joke in my presentation, they'll come up to me afterwards and go, "Why would you lick a stamp? You just peel it and put it on the thing." So the shelf life is really sort of...
Curb your enthusiasm. Curb your enthusiasm. First of all, I want to thank you for Curb Your Enthusiasm. Okay? You played an integral role, and
that's
Larry David's show. And I was watching the episode where Larry was eating in a Palestinian restaurant, and he wanted Fuddrucker, whatever his name is, to go in. What's his name? Fuddrucker? Funkhauser, right. And Larry David got involved with the Palestinian woman, and they had a sex scene. That culture is not canceled. I mean, it's on TV. It's there for everyone to see. And I don't know if culture is canceled as much as people think culture is.
Well, you have a point there. You're absolutely right, because once again, it's other people saying that these other people are going to be offended by it. Larry's a very unique case, though. I mean, Larry, you know, he had this. I was working on the show the first few years of the show, and I remember him saying something about. He put it into the outline because it's not scripted, it's just outlined, and then they have these wonderful improv players just improving about a relative of his who, in New York City, who died, you know, during 9/11. Not the towers, he was uptown, he got hit by a bus, okay. All right, I don't know how many people could do it. Larry can get away with a lot of stuff, you know.
We have one more question from Zoom. As Mel Brooks represents the last of that generation of Jewish comics, are we worried about losing that style of humor?
Oh, that's an excellent question, because there was a rhythm there and there was roots there. A good friend of mine just passed away a few months ago, Norman Lear. He was part of that. It was Carl Reiner, Norman Lear, Mel. Okay, the only one of those 90-year-old guys, Dick Van Dyke, who's not Jewish, is still alive, okay? But they, I worry about that, because while there are Jewish comedians who are younger, all right, and they're carrying on a tradition, if you're talking about intonation, inflection, I don't know who carries that standard after they go. I just don't. Do you?
I totally agree. I see the younger comics don't have that Yiddishkeit that, I mean, I definitely have it, but I do, it's changing. It's, people are being, and they're more careful too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Which is
this
not funny.
This gets back to what I opened with, that if you scratch the surface of American comedy, you'll find Yiddish.
Right.
And as you say, that's with as far as we get.
I mean, think of Yiddish as it's a hilarious. It's so colorful. You know, there's so many words that are. You just say the word. You know, like ungepachka. I mean, there's just so many great Yiddish words. Meshuggah. I mean, the people. You know.
I had written this show for Billy Crystal with him called 700 Sundays, and it was very much about his family, who I never met, okay? I met his mom, but his dad died when he was 15, and, you know, his uncles and aunts, I didn't meet them, but then again, you're talking about a common denominator. I put words in their mouths because I just pretended I was writing from my family, okay? So there was a commonality. So you talk about Yiddish, so I gave him the joke. You know, they spoke mostly Yiddish, which was a combination of German and phlegm, okay? So that worked, okay? But those jokes are going to go away.
Right. That's not actually true, incidentally.
Can I just say what?
You can, sure.
You had me at Bush, Bill.
This I think will be the last question. Sorry.
Okay. Now we have a lot of pressure on it.
You do.
So the history of Jews in comedy in America, right? And the comedians that we revere are mostly from New York. If you look at Groucho Marx, he was born in New York. Joan Rivers was born in Brooklyn. Gilbert was born in Brooklyn. So that's a phenomenon in of itself. Besides Yiddish, there's also this East Coast, New Jersey, right? The East Coast, it's not like that in any. I know a big population of Jews are in New York. I understand that. I know the other side of the thing and all that. But still, that's a phenomenon. When I think of America, we think of New York comedians.
Right. So was that a question?
I understand that.
But also, that term, New York, that's what they used to say you were too Jewish. Like, you know, when I would try to get gigs or I try to sell a show, they're like, it's too New York, and that was the word for, that was their little.
Right, when they first tried to deny
Seinfeld for a pilot, they said it's too New York, and that's a code word for Jewish.
Larry David is my best friend, and you go to his house, and in the bathroom above the toilet, on the wall behind the toilet, is the analysis of the pilot for Seinfeld, okay? And it said, unlikable characters, no storyline, okay? It gave it either a D+ or a C-, all right? And what you have is the initial knee-jerk reaction to anything that's new. You attack it because you haven't seen it before and it doesn't follow form. And then somebody like Brandon Tartikoff, who was the program, if you remember him, at NBC, he said, I like this show. He did the same thing with Cheers, okay? I don't care that it's limping along the bottom of the ratings. I like it. Let's do everything we can to get it out there because it's quality. I don't know if the corporate structure of things now allows for a visionary like that to do something and to defy everything else.
And everything's owned by corporations
Yeah, that's
now,
right.
So.
Okay, so it used to be more mom and pop-ish, you know. So your Seinfeld thing is very, very well taken, you know.
Right. So on that cheery note, I'd like to thank Judy Gold and Alan Zweibel. And thank you for coming. We have blintzes and borscht outside for you. I'm not making that up. And please register for the course, YIVO.org/comedy. Thank you all so much.